Hey, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Coaching from the Couch. This is your Washington Commanders update, and I am your host, Candi CWall Waller, checking in as I love to do all throughout the NFL season as well as throughout the year to give you the latest and greatest information on the Washington Commanders. This is a live Bowie Television recording. So everything we say and do here will also be on Bowie TV. If you are catching this stream on Bowie TV's YouTube channel, hello and welcome on in. If you are watching on my Facebook, again, hello and welcome on in. You all, I know this week isn't what you expected, but we're going to give a minute for folks to come on in. I see Cameron Mingo has already joined and already done the honors of saying hi to Moms and Pops Waller. As I know you all know, they join in on the stream as well. So come on in, folks. We have a lot to cover about the Washington Commanders loss to the Atlanta Falcons 34-27. We are going to dive right on into it. If you all are new here, again, welcome. I like to do a lot of different things and try to be as interactive as possible to get you all's feedback. If you are watching on YouTube, we definitely do the super chat, super thanks, and all of that good stuff. I know Commanders fans are not happy right now. You've had a little bit over 24 hours to kind of get any upset feelings that you may have. You had an opportunity to get through with that. If you all are catching Bowie TV on television, you can find us Comcast channels 190 and 1097. So let's go ahead and get started because you all know, listen, never a dull moment with Bowie TV and never a dull moment with Washington Commanders coverage. So we're going to go ahead and jump right on in. Feel free to share the channel and this content with your Washington Commanders loving family and friends. Love button if you're on Facebook. Thumbs up and make sure you're subscribed if you are on YouTube, because we are certainly going to get on into the conversation. There's a game that we like to play here called What's Your One Word? So go ahead and share what was your one word when the game ended yesterday. The Washington Commanders go down in defeat in the A. What was your one word? But let me get this out before we really dive into the content here. Shout out to all of the Commanders fans that traveled. I thought it was absolutely cool and awesome because when good things did happen in the game, it was like a home game. It was so loud in Mercedes-Benz Stadium. I was like, wow, Commanders fans absolutely showed up and showed out for this one. Too bad that the team did not get the W to bring that home. But at any rate, the Washington Commanders fans, as you always do, are a W. You are a win within yourself. Because you all do such a great job when you travel and you're definitely making some noise up in there. So shout out to you all. But I want to go ahead and let's just dive in. Let's dive in. Let's see where we can go ahead and start. I don't want it to be all negative because of the loss. So let's start with some positive things. Why don't we? It wasn't all bad. We've seen some good things. Bill Krosky Merritt, right? The whole running back room. But I'm just going to pull up a few photos here. Love button, fire emoji, all of those things. There's a lot of still some positive things that can be said, like around the running back room. Bill, Matt Gay made all of his field goal kicks. Okay, that alone deserves a bit of like shout out that Matt Gay made all of the kicks. Thank goodness. Chris Rodriguez continues to, along with, again, with the notion of the running back room, right? Chris Rodriguez, Bill Krosky Merritt continues to show improve, doing an excellent job. You continue to see the security blanket that is Zach Ertz. So you definitely have to shout him out as well. Listen, the defense didn't have that great of a day. Quite frankly, they had a bad day. But the first takeaway of the year goes to Mikey Samerstill. So we'll certainly get into that a moment here down the line when we get into some of the video content and kind of breaking down and talking through some of the content from the press conferences. Luke McCaffrey. Ladies and gentlemen, Luke McCaffrey. There was some positive things to say about Luke. Luke basically being the primary returner yesterday, making some headway there. Definitely a great touchdown. Shout out to Luke 2 weeks in a row. Great progress for him. I'm continuously being impressed by Deebo Samuel. Deebo Samuel makes a great play every week. So we want to shout out Deebo as well. Just some of the positive things, right? Again, it wasn't all bad. I mean, it was all bad, but there's still some things that I actually wanted to acknowledge and say, hey, here's some positive things. Is there something good that you could say? Absolutely, because there were definitely some moments where you got excited or you said, way to go, or this is great, or it gave you some hope during the time. So you definitely wanted to shout out those players. Before we get into some of the press conference content, because if you are just tuning in, this is the live Bowie Television recording. I am Candi CWall Waller, who for the channel not only serves as the president, but also is on site with the Washington Commanders. Before we get into some of the the video content and press conferences, because you know me, we're going to definitely use our clues here, you all. We're going to absolutely get into a use your clues session for certain. And in some areas, if we have time and if we're able to do that, we'll get to pulling some receipts as well. You know, I like to pull receipts at times. Receipts are good to keep. But at any, we're going to get to all of that. Really want to dive into, of course, Coach Quinn's press conferences, some clips from last week, his press conference today, as well as Joe Witt's press conference from last week. So want to get into that. So make sure you all are staying tuned, because I want to get your feedback and your comments back on what you're hearing, what you're seeing now that the game is over, just responses to it. But before we get into all of that, and we're going to try to, address so many, of your conversation or your questions as possible, I want to get into, can we just go ahead and jump into snap counts? If you can see this, you may have already seen this today, because I know typically that is something that, you all like to dive into. Not sure if you can see it on the screen. It might be kind of small for you all, but you could see offensively who had 100% of the snap counts, how that shook out. Another thing to note from an offense perspective, Brandon Coleman was a healthy scratch again. You see Nick Allegretti also snap count way down, way down to the ground, basically. So these are things to note when Sam Cosmi soon gets back. How do things shake out? They definitely have players right on IR. Unfortunately, Javonte Jean-Baptiste is headed to IR with a torn pec. So he will be out for a while per Coach Quinn. But those are kind of the big notes here that I feel like are important as you pay attention to who took 100% of the snaps on offense and who did not, right? And then who was a healthy scratch. This is the defensive snaps here. So taking a look at the defensive snap count, I think that it is very, very important to note, yes, who had 100% of the snaps. And I'm going to go ahead and jump here, because this is kind of your special teams. We're going to talk about this a bit more in a moment. I've been on shows kind of all week long talking about the Atlanta Falcons and continue to share, a desperate team is a dangerous team. is a dangerous team. And you can't let, it's week to week. You can't let, you just can't let that 0 that they scored against the Carolina Panthers fool you. The Washington Commanders played the Atlanta Falcons last December, and absolutely comment in the chat if you remember that game. If you remember that game last December, it was a lot of different things, right? And I would always say, and you all have heard me say this, I said it about the Hail Mary game. It's a lot of things I've said. One of them, I said, a game you have to watch your back on is the Atlanta Falcons. Okay. I've talked about the Atlanta Falcons game. I've talked about the Bears game. I've talked about the Detroit Lions game, a sleeper game. I've talked about the Broncos game coming up. Of course, you always have to watch your back within your division. But I always said Atlanta, Chicago, and Detroit, you got to watch your back. Okay. And I said it then, and I have no problem with saying it again. I said, hey, if the Commanders didn't win the coin toss in overtime, could have been looking at a very different outcome in December. And you cannot, as this comment says from Lamar Blunt, you can't, a team that's desperate, they dangerous. And I went back and I said to myself, and I'm going to pull this back up in terms of the snap count, because we're really going to get into the defense here. What did they do last year to address the Falcons' offensive weapons? Because in December, it sure did look like the Falcons' offense, it was matched up very well. So I had to go back and look. And maybe I shouldn't have looked, you all. Maybe I shouldn't have paid any attention to it. Okay? And I'm going to show this again because maybe you've already figured out why I'm showing this one again about who didn't get any defensive snaps and was only on special teams. I went back and I looked because I said that was a tough day for the Commanders defense. That back in December, it was a tough day. But what did they do? I had to go back and check. And they kind of used Jeremy Chin like a linebacker. Of course, he's on Kyle Pitts, right? To help with Bijan, it was more like Quan Martin, Percy Butler. Comment in the chat if you're following me here, okay? I'm going to repeat myself because I think this is a very, very important point. And yes, I know it's a different season. I know. Yep, it is. But if we're using our clues, I said you just saw them in December. They were out for blood anyway after the way they lost. In my opinion, they were. And now they're desperate because they scored literally 0 points the week prior. 0. They still got the same weapons. And I recall that day almost being an L for the Commanders. It was very close. Again, it was overtime. Whoever wins the coin toss, Jaden was hot at that time. So, hey, Commanders won the coin toss. Okay. Also, that game, the Commanders controlled the time of possession. Okay. I'm taking you back to December. I'm pulling receipts, using our clues. How did they cover the weapons? Now, mind you, I didn't say much about Drake London. I didn't say much because, I don't even know what was happening, but I do remember I just needed to know who was covering. Jeremy Chin being kind of used and leveraged as a linebacker, Kyle Pitts, help with Bijan, Quan Martin, Percy Butler. Now let's come to present day. Will Harris is basically like your new Jeremy Chin, right? He's out. Okay. Percy Butler out. We know then there's an opportunity for Jeremy Reeves. So then who helps? Because we're still missing a person, right? Then who helps? Who else? Right? Because Will and Percy are out. So then what's the answer here? What's the answer? I'm going to pull up this snap count again. So in my mind, once I saw or knew, okay, Kane is now active. I said, here we go, Kane Madrano time, everybody. Here we go. Because if it's one thing that I've noted and noticed about Kane is that he's fast, very fast, right? Kane is active. They're going to unleash him to help with Bijan. At that point, I'm also like Tyler Owens time, okay? I'm also like Jordan McGee, you're up. Let's do this. All right, here we go. This is optimal time to get them involved because they're going to be needed. Okay. Did I name everybody? And then there's Ali Cahoe. Don't forget about Ali Cahoe. Undrafted, he came in, made the roster. So while people say the team is old, see, I have a different perspective of that because I know who all the players are on the team. And I know all the 4 people that I just named were active. And so I said to myself, okay, wait a second. Hold on. So all of them are active only to play special teams? We got a problem. There's a problem. Because I can tell you some of the things that you saw yesterday, that's not what they did. That's not what happened. It's not what happened. Now, we're going to get into some of the video content and some of the press conference content because this is important. And I'm going to more than likely I'm going to start with Coach Witt's press conference opening statement from last week, which is actually like around a little over 3 minutes long. He went into a deep dive. So it wasn't like we're experiencing something where the team wasn't aware, right? It wasn't that they were aware. They weren't aware because they absolutely are aware. But it's kind of like the people that I'm naming, or let's go back because I know there's a lot of talk about the linebacker position. Well, guess what? Last year when they played them, guess what happened? They played 100% of the snaps then too. That's not it. It's just going back to what I said about Jeremy Chin, how they used him. It was how he was utilized. He still covered the tight end, but it was how he was utilized. Things can happen. All I'm saying is there are fast players on the defense. The question becomes, why were all 4 of them not utilized? Because that's 4 too many not to at least try. Let's be clear. In December, they weren't very successful, right? That was a tough day. I went back and watched it, okay? Michael Penix had a tougher, had a more tough second half in December, right? And I think that was only like his second start. All I'm saying is there was a formula. You used one player as kind of like a flex, right? You used the safety, kind of used them more like a linebacker. You had 2 safeties help with the running back. 2 of the safeties you probably would have used for yesterday are out. But you have 3 linebackers and a safety on the sideline during defensive snaps. Not real sure why that would be, but if you understand what I'm putting down, go ahead and put that in the chat. Because that's a very important observation and a point. Because if they're not getting it, what's going on here. Because these are very fast players. Where, of course, in my very logical mind, I'm just like, hey, one of y'all go get Bijan. You know what I mean? And go. Because I honestly, once I saw Kane was active, I said, and roll him. Just roll him. Because I'm not saying he would have done a better job. Let me be clear on that. But what I can say is I absolutely can dig and get down with the attempt to try. So if there was no attempt to try, that's something that could be potentially questioned for certain. Now, let me try to find, and let's go ahead and get started. I want you all to stick with me on this because you know how I kind of do things. After the game, it doesn't matter win or lose. Now I got to pull the receipts from the press conference. Let's see what's said. Let's see what happened because there were some questions. Of course, you know, Coach Witt comes in, Coach Kingsbury, Coach Quinn. They talk about the upcoming game. So now I kind of want to go back in because this is the receipt. This is clip of Coach Witt's opening, and this is about a little over 3 minutes. So stick with it while you're listening to this. Make sure you drop in the chat what you're hearing. What are all the things? Right? Now that the game is behind, right? Because then we're going to also come up to today and Coach Quinn's press conference today. But there is certainly a lot to digest here. If you all are just tuning in, this is a live Bowie Television recording from the Coaching from the Couch series, the Washington Commanders Update. I'm your host, Candi CWall, who spends a lot of time on site with the Washington Commanders and on the Daily Beat. So let's go ahead and get into Coach Witt's presser.
All right, so we'll start off with just a recap of last week's game, and then I'll talk about Atlanta, and then any questions that you guys have. Last week, I thought a couple guys that really stood out were Payne. He graded the highest on the defense. I mean, he was just outstanding. I mean, the highest of the year. And along with him up front, you had DA and JK. They all graded really well in the midline. Bobby, he graded out really well. And then on the back end, it was Sean and Trey. And so I thought we did a nice job, and we've done a nice job all year on first down, stopping the run. So that's produce more 2nd and 7+, which gives us the ability to rush the passers. I think we're produce the 4th most 2nd and 7+, and the 3rd most 3rd and 11+. So when saying that allows us to get after the quarterback a little bit more. But it all starts with stopping the run, especially in between the tackles. Green Bay game, they got outside of us with some receiver runs. So I think the rushing coverage was good from that standpoint. 3rd down, I thought, was really good in the game. I think they were 3 of 14, somewhere around there. I think we're very high in the league in that. So some things that we have to make sure we shore up. They had 100 yards on 2 pass plays. And so you definitely don't want one, and those went for 10 points. You definitely don't want that to happen. We had opportunities at turnovers. We dropped the interception. 2 times we were sacking the quarterback. He had one hand on the ball, and we were close to getting the ball out, but close doesn't cut it. So we didn't have any turnovers. So, that was a recap of what, from the Vegas game. But I thought the guys, man, the play style was what we were looking for. We have what we call turnbacks, where either we tackle them behind the line of scrimmage or their head is pointing towards their end zone. And we had 26 of those plays. That's a lot, when you're hitting and turning people back the other way or hitting them behind their line of scrimmage. So I really like the run and hit. We just have to cut down the explosive plays. We have 9 for the year. That's 3 per game, and that's too many. Now, talking about Atlanta, man, really just a young, talented offense, okay? And it starts with the running back. We put up the key players each week, and, you put the strength and the weaknesses, and I didn't have any weaknesses for the guy, man. I was just like, man, he can do it all. He can run inside, outside. He can catch. He can block. He can run the screen game. He does it all very, very well. So, and then you have London, who's a really good tough, when I say dirty, he gets in there and block, but he's a receiver, and he blocks like a tight end. And then you get to the tight end Pitts, he runs like a receiver, and he's very talented. I think he's having a good year. And the quarterback, really good arm talent. The ball pops out of his hand. He could throw it deep. He could throw, make any throw. And then the line, the veterans, Matthews is still there. The guards still, they're blocking as a unit. So I know people are going to say, what happened to them last week? Well, guess what? What happened to us in Green Bay? We did not want that to happen twice. So they're not going to want that to happen twice. So they're going to come out ready to play. Raheem's a hell of a coach. He knows both sides of the ball, and he's going to have those guys ready to rock and roll. So.
If you're just tuning in, you're watching a live Bowie Television recording. I am your host, Candi CWall Waller, who reports on the Washington Commanders. Sounds a lot like they all knew each one of the players that had a very good day on them. They were well aware, right? They were well aware. And this is why I always share from press conferences and always encourage listening to press conferences, because they're giving you the answer. So you knew. He even said, Bijan Robinson, he has no weaknesses. Okay. When it comes to a Bijan Robinson, I am a Bijan Robinson advocate. Okay. Huge advocate. And there's just some people you can't, it's just too hard. It's just, you can't cover. It's difficult to cover. It was difficult. Okay. It's hard. It's difficult, right? He had a good game last year against the Commanders. So it is very hard. And it was well aware of how they were going to come out. It was this, I don't know why the plan deviated or didn't look like it was prepared at times from a scheme perspective. Now, let's also get into the point, because this is a very important point as well. Poor tackling is on the players. Okay. Coach Quinn talked about that today in his press conference, where, in the double digits of missed tackles on defense and on special teams. Missed tackles that, it's week 4. Should not be happening. Now, do I have a theory on that? Absolutely. Because I know during OTAs and camp and all that, you can't full on tackle. So maybe that is a thing that may be impacting some of the players. But when you saw an opponent in December, when you know that they're going to come out firing off of all cylinders, when you know all of these things and you are well versed in their personnel, and then those same personnel that you are well versed on comes in each one of them, make huge plays on you, and then you actually have personnel that could help. Again, we'll never know if they would have been successful. We will never know that. But what we do know is that when you're talking speed for speed in other areas, because, I'm going to play some more from Coach Witt's press conference last week, but there's just some areas where absolutely you need the intellect, the intellectual property of understanding and knowing what an offense is going to do before they even execute it is what you absolutely need on the field. I'm an advocate for that. You need the strategic thinking. You need that on the field. But you got to mix some things up in other spaces than to maybe even have a similar approach to what you did last year if you are drafting and have the free agent capital on your roster that can help prevent some of the things you were very open and transparent about needing to prevent. Okay, so let's get into some more, because all eyes on the safety group. Will Harris and Percy Butler being out is a thing, you all. It's a thing. Going back to how did they cover them in December? Well, Jeremy Chin was mostly on Pitts. They were using him as a linebacker. He was, from what I could tell. And Percy and Quan helped with Bijan. Jeremy Chin, now Will Harris out. Percy Butler, who have now out. So you have Jeremy Reeves coming in. Okay, Darnell Savage came in, but he just got here last week. So then the conversation becomes, again, I'm going to keep saying it, Tyler Owens couldn't get in for defensive snaps. Jordan McGee, Kane Madrano, Ali Cahoe couldn't get in. And if not, that's 4 people that have that speed, have that athleticism. They couldn't help. More to come on that. Something to watch. That's 4. That's a lot in week 4. When 2 out of the 4 were here last year. That is something to watch. Use your clues. Take good notes, you all, because that's something to keep your eye on. Coach Witt was asked about the safety group last week. Check out his response.
Will Harris out, unfortunately, but you guys have a deep group back there. How do you kind of see it shaking out?
Yeah, first, I hate that Will, is out, but tough player. Went back out there and played on it for another player, too. So, Revo, we talked about Revo during training camp, not training camp, but even before then, during the spring. Man, he's deserved this time. And the thing that I said was, how do we pull him away from special teams? And that's going to be the challenge. And that's what we have to work at, because he is our special teams ace. But you saw the play he made on 3rd and 1, just diving in there. He's a physical guy. He's a guy that I do feel like can produce the ball. He's smart. He communicates well. So, his role would definitely pick up. T.O. will have to pick up his role. And now that we have Savage here, Jason Simmons had Savage in Green Bay. And I remember when he first got him, he called me. He's like, man, this dude is the smartest rookie I've ever had. And so when he got here a couple of days ago, we have our concept teaching that we put on our iPad. He was popping off our defense because he had gone through our film already. And so, or the concept tapes. So he's an extremely smart guy. And so hopefully he can grasp it soon, and so we can get him out there.
I want to go back to this comment here from James Roundtree, because to Candi's point, investments were made in the offseason in key areas that would have helped on Sunday, and these investments didn't see the field. That's wild. Well, it was actually 4, not to be petty, but I'm just going to say it's 4, because Tyler Owens is a safety. Defensive snaps, Jordan McGee, Kane Madrano, these are 2 of your draft picks. 1 from last year, 1 from this year. Tyler Owens, Ali Cahoe, undrafted, but again, still very, very interesting. And if you look at the profile of each one of them, one of the things they're really known for is their speed. Let's go to another question. One is from John Keim. It was on the explosive plays, and another one was from myself. Let's get into Keim's question first. Again, still diving into Joe Witt's press conference from last week.
And then you talk about the explosive plays in the pass game. Like, what is there a theme, and what are you doing to help cut down on those?
It's really not a theme from this last game. We just didn't do our damn job. Cover the guy and send the ball where we're supposed to send it. So every coverage that we have, there's rules to it, and we want to send the ball. So in certain coverages, if they catch the ball on the out route, nothing's going to be said because we have other coverages for that. If they catch the ball here or there, we have, but if you're not defending where it's supposed to be defended, it's going to be an issue. And so we just got the players and they have to do their job there. So, and I got to make sure they do it.
All right, let's get into it. Let's dive into it a bit more, because again, I'm talking a lot about scheme. If you're just tuning in, live Bowie Television recording. I am your host, Candi CWall Waller, on the daily beat of the Washington Commanders, reporting for Bowie TV. Now we got to do your job. All right, which could be true. Again, this goes back to the poor tackling, because there's just like no excuse for that. It was really bad, really, really bad. Okay, so we got a dual. It's a challenge when you talk coaching and scheming and those things, and then you get out there and then you don't actually execute. That becomes a challenge. All right, so couple things here. And they just didn't look good. They didn't look like they were ready for the moment. Every game is like a moment in my mind. And the schedule doesn't get any easier. I want to go back to something. I probably should have played this one first. You know, the Commanders do mic'd up. All right, they do mic'd up. Anybody love button, fire emoji in the chat if you like watching the Commanders mic'd up or listening to it. Last year, wild card weekend playoffs, Bobby Wagner was mic'd up. So this clip that I'm getting ready to show is from his mic'd up video courtesy of the Washington Commanders. If you watch that mic'd up, do you all remember this from his mic'd up?
Likewise. They'll be jumping over the field goal. It's a receive? 100%. They wanted to receive. Yeah, all right. You know how disrespectful that is? Come on, bro.
That's not fun, bro. That's fine. Early enough. Let's go. Bring it up first. Hey, 3 1 2 3.
So who remembers that? If you watched it, you're like, and in the press box yesterday, I literally said, oh, the Falcons want to receive. And Bobby's mic'd up and he's like, oh, they want to receive 100%. It comes back. Do you know how disrespectful that is? So the Falcons wanted to receive. In the words of Bobby Wagner, do you know how disrespectful that is? They just told you what they think about you. So you can either take that shot like you got on a bulletproof vest, or you can take that shot like you just got hit because they just hit you and you're just going to keep letting them do it the whole entire game. I'm not saying those were fighting words, but what I am saying, if Bobby Wagner says things like that are disrespectful, then it is. And you should probably act accordingly for the next 60 minutes. Because clearly, that's what they're about to do. And that's the kind of time that they're on. And I see that someone remembers the video and says, apparently Atlanta wanted to make a statement and they unfortunately made it successfully. Oh, yes, this was a game you had to watch your back. Absolutely watch your back. Now, let me move on to then my question last week to Coach Witt about the non-explosive plays. And I want to continue. You all feel free to comment in the chat and dive in a bit more about what you're hearing from the press conferences. And even let me know, are you hearing it differently now? Maybe you listened to it last week and it didn't resonate, or you kind of maybe missed that point or didn't think of it that way until after you've now watched the game and you reflect on the press conference and what's said. And it's like, you know what? Yeah, right. Or, okay, well, you knew. So what happened here? Here's my question on the non-explosive plays. And if you notice in the video, Coach Witt definitely gave me a smile when I said I'd like to go back to the non-explosive plays, please.
Hey, Coach. So going back to the non-explosive plays that you mentioned in the first 3 games of the season, were any of those, without giving any secret sauce, of course, were any of those is it just football, or is it one of those things where it's like, okay, yeah, we were not in the right spot?
Okay, like the ones in Green Bay, we guy was free, right? We didn't play that one correctly. The very first play of the game this past week, the kid didn't play it correctly, right? He should not be that open. The last play, played the coverage right, didn't play it the way they should have been, shouldn't have been open. So those 3 plays, they were just wide open. And that's bothersome to me, because if you're fighting like hell and the guy catches the ball, like on the one that was on Sean that I thought was OPI on the sideline in Green Bay, that really that's football, okay? They're going to catch some balls, okay, every once in a while. But we can't have free runners. And so the switch verticals, which this team ran again, they ran the switch verticals and Noah broke it up. And then we ran the switch verticals on them, and McCaffrey scored the touchdown. Same play, All right, they ran the same play. We ran the same play. Well, you're going to get it every week at some point. You just have to defend it. We got against New York, we defended it. We got against Green Bay, we didn't. Got it this week, we did. Hopefully, we defended the rest of the week because you're going to get those issue type plays. But we can't allow those free runners.
So, all right, everybody. I'm not saying you may or may not know which plays Coach Witt is describing. Okay. But if you do, and you do remember, then you know who it's on. You know who it's on. Right? Because that's why I always have to say, hey, listen, you don't have to give me a secret sauce. We're not talking about, but if you are describing it, which he did, he gave 3 examples of the 9. If you know, or you remember those plays, you go back and watch, then you can see who it was on. I want to move on. I believe this is a question that my good colleague and friend Donna Hopkins asked to Coach Quinn. And it was about Atlanta. I believe this was her question. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I could be wrong on this one. Which one? I think it was. I think it was on Atlanta special teams. If it was her, then I think I got another one. Because listen, they had a good special teams unit too. So there was one that she asked, and another one my good colleague David Harrison asked as well. So I might have them, we might have them in mixed match order, but special teams is a thing, you all. Special teams is absolutely a thing.
Teams, could you talk a little bit about that? Last week they had 100 and some yards in the kickoff and also in the punt return. What are you seeing there?
Yeah, as difficult as it was on at the Green Bay game on offense, defense, I thought we missed some of our identity. I didn't feel like we missed it on special teams. I thought we had some good returns. We had some opportunities to do it. So it is one of the stronger parts of us. We've gotten to the spot that, and we've learned that each of the phases we're all connected to one another, and it's just playing ball, man. I'm a receiver. I'm play teams. I'm just a ball player. And so when that happens, and you're not just an island to yourself, and I just do this or I just do that, and like everybody's down for whatever it takes to go, I think that's when the good things can take place. Izzo's right there in the front of it. Like, this is the type of guy like you'd want to play for. He's got energy, but I love also seeing the development of like Jordan McGee and Tyler Owens. Like, they've established themselves, their presence, their speed, their physicality, and there'll be others, that will grow from it. Ballor's in the middle of that, and they help bring the next ones along. And I think if we can continue into that space of continuing to develop people, the field position battles are going to be a big one. And our special teams will be right in the middle of that, including Tress too, in terms of can we punt and keep them backed up into those spots. We had one with lose Antonio Hamilton, caught a punt that was downed. So all of those things, they add up. And so some of the margins in the game, you hear me talk about, are turnover margin, tackling margin, but winning field position, that's a big piece of it. And the return game, both sides, that'll be a factor again this week. I really feel like fourth downs, offense, defense, and on special teams, the punt return, they're going to be right in the front and center of this game too.
Now, some of the players that I've named that could have helped, you heard Coach Quinn name them and their impact on special teams, which is fantastic because we know much of that is where it starts, right, on special teams. But then the question is still like, well, why couldn't they help in other areas since there's teammates of theirs out, right? But he mentions Jordan McGee and Tyler Owens and how they're growing there. So again, just keep note because I'm still mentioning some of these players that are in the mix in other areas. Why not also here? And why couldn't they have also been a contributor in the defensive snaps when you used a model last year that could have used them, right? So I'm just going to keep bringing that up because it's a real thing. But here is another one about Atlanta special teams. I think this one is David Harrison's question, I think.
Good afternoon, Coach.
Good afternoon.
Jalen and the punt return unit as a whole has been pretty strong for you guys this year. For the Falcons, their punter and their punt coverage team has also been pretty strong for them. How do you go about making sure that your strength can be stronger than theirs, and how big of a boost can that give you this weekend if you can make that happen?
Yeah, the field position, man, that's the thing. Can you find ways to get a long return, find ways that's, could be a first down, could be 2 first downs in terms of the field position. So finding your spaces, when they're trying to flip the field and somebody, not just Atlanta, but anybody kicks it deep, that's when you have a chance, because usually the long returns don't come, when you're, on a plus 50 punt. Those are the ones that you have your chance and you got to go. And then the outside guys are key for us, man, the gunners, and they've got to feel the speed and go after it. So it's definitely a good matchup this weekend on both sides, man. And absolute, you'll feel speed and energy and toughness on both sides.
So I want to go back to this question about the injury bug, because listen, it's a real thing with the Washington Commanders. They didn't see their first real injury until week 6. And they didn't they were healthy at full strength, right? And the hard truth is, again, I'm going to go back to the fact that Will Harris, Percy Butler out, and they were much needed for this matchup against the Falcons. Much needed. And I still go, I'm repeating myself now about the players that did, that didn't step in that regard. But there are ways, because I want to acknowledge this comment here. And Bobby Wagner's been playing all snaps. All. And because there's other injuries, I think the question doesn't necessarily become, is he playing too many snaps? It just becomes well, why aren't other players replacing then actively the players who have been here? For example, Darnell Savage goes in and has more defensive snaps than Tyler Owens and Jordan McGee. Well, why is that? He just got here last week. Those are certain things like that. And when you know that Bobby plays the defensive quarterback, that's how I look at him. He's a necessary component to the overall success, but he played 100 snaps in wins. He played 100 of the snaps in other pieces, but you have a healthier safety group. But even if you don't have it, then it becomes, how do you work them in? Because 2 things could be true, and it could happen more than one, because they've done it before, is what I'm saying. They have done this before. And so that's where my concern is well, wait, you've done this. You just saw them. It's the same people, but you got to change up some things on your end. And if there's a danger that communication could still be off, and we're going to talk about that in a moment too, as we switch over now and get into some more of Coach Quinn's presser from today, because there could be something to be said about everybody that's playing 100%, of the snaps, right? I can go back to the offensive line and say, well, now Andrew Wiley is playing 100% of the snaps at right guard, and Nick Allegretti is playing 1. Brandon Coleman is out of the rotation altogether and is a healthy scratch, inactive 2 weeks in a row. So the snap count absolutely matters. But when you've seen something, and it wasn't great that day. Again, I want to be clear. The Commanders defense didn't have a grand day in December. They did not when they played the Atlanta Falcons. They didn't. The score was tied. The Washington Commanders won the coin toss. Jaden went down the field. Zach Ertz scores a touchdown. Game over. That's how that shaked out. And my concern has always been, when the team wins, we all kind of forget about the deficiencies. They were there, right? I've always talked about my concern for the Hail Mary game. I always say that. When they played Chicago last year, that was not a good game. But because of the Hail Mary, everybody forgot about some of the deficiencies that were there. The dunk to the divisional round, the Commanders against Tampa Bay, that was a close call. So many close games. But again, this goes back to draft picks, free agency, the roster depth, what's happening, so that when players are out, because that is a hard and unfortunate truth right now for the Washington Commanders with these injuries, how are you replacing them and being effective? Because that poor tackling is just unacceptable, flat out. That's on the players. That, in my opinion, that is on the players. That is unacceptable. That is just not good. But you almost looked better last December than you did yesterday. Just saying. So I see the value in everyone. I see the value in all that they can do and who they are and what they could be. And they just didn't show up like that in Atlanta. They just didn't. And I don't, and of course, nobody knows why. Javon Kinlaw, I saw that JP posted it because I was rushing to the airport, was very accountable in his play, right? Taking his own, hey, I got to tackle better. I got to do better. This is not good. I didn't, and it's just, they as a unit, they just, I don't know. More to come on that. A lot of questions there, but there's a way it can work at least better than it did yesterday. That's all I'm saying. It could work better than it did. Let's get into Coach Quinn's press conference today. Let's dive in there.
So through 4 games, 2-2, as the head coach, what have you seen so far? Obviously a mixed bag. What have you liked, and maybe what haven't you liked?
Yeah, so I would say I thought offensively, the guys done a good job with the ball, in terms of taking care of it, being mindful for it. We've not created enough, takeaway opportunities defensively. So I'll start with that, right, kind of at the top of the pile. I think we're gaining on our running game, and making progress into that space. Up until the second half, I was pleased with where we were gaining ground on third down on defense. But overall, just, man, let's make sure consistent at it, Scott. No roller coaster like this is how we go all the time. And I want that play style to be wherever we're at and however we go. And so we'll dig in hard to do that.
So I want to go back to this question here. If the roster is the issue, when do, we start scrutinizing the AP for his personnel? You got to see how this thing plays out. And what is difficult is that AP can bring them in, he can't put them in. Okay, the game. That goes back to my point about why those 4 were on the sidelines during defensive snaps. All right. So you got to get into why they're in the building on the roster. Why aren't they in the game? That's one area. I think another area becomes the coaching, the training around getting takeaways, and what in the world is going on with this tackling. What is this about? Because that was just really looked like a step back from my perspective. Now, I've mentioned this on other shows, and I think that something that is flying under the radar is that one of the draft picks from last year was released after preseason game 1, Dominique Hampton, right? Some things not working out. So yeah, I think there could be some scrutiny there when you look at that. And then again, if you're week 4, there should be some people in, way more people in than out. And there's ways to do that. I think, especially once you are dealing with injuries, you all, that is where I'm coming from. There's some ways to do this. And when people are, because now does it become, I sat in between Donna Hopkins and Lake Lewis yesterday in the press box. And I will tell you in a very transparent way, I certainly had some thoughts once I saw defensively very early on what was happening. It instantly didn't make sense to me. It didn't, it just didn't. Bobby Wagner in space, Dorrance Armstrong dropping back in coverage several times. It didn't resonate with me because I'm like, I know this isn't how they played this. And I know it's not the same players, right? But there's gotta be a different way to do this. I don't know. The intellectual property needs to be on the field. I get it. I agree. But sometimes it really is checkers. It's not chess. And you just need to match speed for speed. Not necessarily saying they would have been 1,000% better. I'm not saying that at all. But I also would love to have seen an attempt. Try it and see what happens. Because again, Darnell Savage was put in the game quicker than the other four that I've named, and he just got here. And so I was like, what? And I like him. I like him a lot. But the moment was not, I didn't know. It didn't make sense to me. And I like for things to make sense. And sometimes they just don't, right? And even last year, I never really, really got into it. I think this game was the first time that I was like, what are we watching again? Because it doesn't look familiar to me. Even with the injuries, it didn't look familiar. It was almost like you're being too technical or too smart and it's just like, just play football. Like, hey. And I don't know, I don't know. And I don't like not knowing. Anybody else like not knowing? Not that I gotta know everything, because I've said it, but I like to understand what I'm seeing. And it just seemed overly strategic and something that wasn't going to work. In other areas, in other games, sure, but Bijan Robinson is Coach Witt named everything. No weaknesses, none, not a one. You were going to have a hard day anyway. Why not just match some of it? Just who can get there faster? Who's the fastest person to get there? And then the poor tackling just didn't help at all. It doesn't even help the case if you are not a Coach Witt advocate right now. It doesn't help the case. But two things can be true, in that the scheme was not, it didn't mirror what was done previously that I thought partially worked, right? Partially, because it wasn't, hey, again, I'm going to go back to December, y'all. That wasn't pretty either. But it was better than what happened and what everybody watched yesterday. Let's dive into more of Dan Quinn's press conference today. This next question was asked by David Aldridge. I absolutely would love to see you all's feedback on this one.
Dan, do you think anybody is being targeted in particular on defense, or do you think it's just a matter of on a particular play, there's again, a physical or a communication issue that leaves somebody isolated that maybe shouldn't be isolated?
Yeah, a little bit of both, Dave, to be honest with you. There could be, at some point, somebody has a hard down. Like, that's just how it is. If it's man-to-man, it's outside. If you're in zones, oftentimes, like, who's number 3, that can be a linebacker, and you don't want that matchup to go. So there could be 20 times where the matchup could have happened, but the certain formation didn't click to go. So I think it's a little bit of a combination of both. Certainly give credit to Atlanta to, schematically have some, but we've also, got to have the right leverage. You got to have the right techniques. And if you do that, you give yourself a fighting chance, even when they're hard. But if you don't, boy, we all know, like, hard matchup and poor technique, that'll put you in a bad space fast.
Put you in a bad space fast. I want to say, and I don't think we have it. I could be wrong. I don't think we have it at all. But back during OTAs, I can pull this back up because I want to address this here. Annie, are they telling us they are not ready by not playing them? I could be. I don't know the answer to that question. Because here's why. I'm going to pull the receipt. I don't have it right now. But I'm going to share this receipt. If you all remember at OTAs and then again in training camp, I started to ask Coach Witt. I first asked in May about Kane Madrano and what he saw, what they're seeing in Kane Madrano. And what he said was, love and fire emoji. If you remember me asking this question about Kane Madrano, and what was said was, we don't know yet if he's more like Frankie Louvu or Jeremy Chin. So going back to something I said earlier in the show, which was once I saw Kane was active, I said, brilliant. They are going to unleash Kane to help with Bijan. Brilliant. Perhaps he's more like Jeremy Chin, which would make sense to me. I'm not a coach. I'm not a strategist in that way, but it makes total sense to me because Will Harris is out. Percy Butler also out. Two extremely fast players. Kane, extremely fast. I said, oh, he can help. I said, because Quan, I'm going through everything. Okay, Quan, and then there's Revo, and I'm sure Tyler's going to get in that mix, but Kane can get in there. Maybe they see him more like Jeremy Chin, right? Perfect with Will and Percy being out. Cool. I'm like, then Jordan McGee gets in the mix a bit, and they didn't do it. So that was also, now I'm going to say this. In terms of Marshawn, we have seen them go after Marshawn. Yesterday, you may have seen a bit more of them going after Bobby, because people don't go after Bobby Wagner. Let's be clear. They know how smart he is. And typically against the run, he's mean. Bijan Robinson is hard to catch and cover for anybody. All right. It was easy to do once they saw how Bobby was being utilized. It was easy to do. Easy, actually. When he's playing the run, immaculate. And he knows what's going on. Right? So I'm playing these things because I want you all to make sure that you could see it. And I'm gonna go to this because this is an important point. And I shouted out the Commanders fans who went to the game. Kudos to you, because when good things did happen for the Commanders, you all were loud. And let's say 34-27, it's like the sky isn't falling, okay? Because actually the score was a lot closer than the game looked to myself, even to be honest with you, all right? But you said there were holes in spaces. Atlanta was just running through like it was nothing. Yeah, what's going on with the defensive line? What happened there? There's a lot to be said about what's going on there. So it's some of this stuff has been a recurring thing. Others, that just happened against Atlanta. So I want to make sure, again, the game plan, I can tell and understand why the game plan and the coverage was different because of the injuries. I just don't know why others that did not get any defensive snaps didn't cover that space. So that's what I believe. Okay. And it's just, it was bizarre. And I definitely had some comments about how bizarre it was. And yes, Commanders fans, I was so proud. I said, well, look at this. Because at one point in time, I had to go walk it off. And I wasn't even sure what happened. And I want to acknowledge this too. Definitely missing Dietrich Wise. You all, there are some important pieces missing on defense. Will Harris and Percy Butler are two safeties that were missed. Now, I don't know why they didn't replace them with two other safeties or a linebacker that can also be a safety. Again, going back to the Madrano. And maybe I was a little disappointed because I said, you know what? I just knew it was a part of some brilliant plan. I was like, yes. Oh my gosh, duh, Candi, you didn't come up with that. You didn't know that's what they were doing. Of course, they're saving Kane to play Bijan. They need him there. He's so fast. I'm just making up all this stuff. Like, yes, because I've been discussing it all week. Now, wait a minute now, Coach Witt. What exactly is going to happen? I played earlier about, Nikki Javala's question about the safety group. I was really concerned all week. Like, well, how are they going to... What is the answer for Bijan? I was kind of okay with Kyle Pitts. I was kind of like, it is what it is with Drake London, but you can't let all three of them have it. Now, that's just a lot. And so I was really concerned, like, what is the answer? As soon as the game started and I saw what was happening, I said, oh, what? No, don't do this. Don't do this. No. Please don't do this. And that's what was being done. Eek. I want to address this comment here, and we're going to get into some more clips because I asked Coach Quinn today about Mikey Samuel. I think you all really want to listen to this response from Coach Quinn. Also asked him about the communication. There's a couple other things because he answered a question about the Commanders' pass rush as well. This is going back to the defensive line. It was a lot of issues, you all. A ton of issues. You got to remember, the defensive line getting pressure helps everybody. So when they're missing tackles and they just letting people run right through them, that's a problem. I want to acknowledge this comment here about if it may have been difficult if JD5 played. Listen, everybody. It's last December. If the Washington Commanders had not won the coin toss in overtime. So that is why I was so surprised. Not saying I thought they were going to win the football game, because again, I'm standing 10 toes down on if the Commanders hadn't won that coin toss and Jaden didn't get that football, I was like, the defense is not stopping the Falcons. So whatever you do, Jaden, don't give the Falcons the ball back. And he didn't. Also remember how exhausted Jaden was. That was the moment Marcus Mariota came out and talked to him. Jaden was running for his life. He was running. He was everywhere that game. Everywhere. Right? Now, I would say even Jaden or Marcus and what happened even yesterday, the only thing I would say about the offense, because this is mostly about the defense and what I saw was, the culprit there, because 27 points could have got you a W. If your defense was up to par. And but in some areas you want to score, not just those field goals, you really want to turn those into touchdowns. We've been talking about that since the summertime, right? But I do think they should have ran the football more, for sure. You got a strong group there, right? We know that Bill has been dealing with a lingering injury and weren't even certain that he was going to play, right? He was questionable, hadn't really practiced all week, had a good practice on Friday, but you really do have to do it by committee. I would have liked to have seen Chris Rodriguez get some more touches, honestly, as well as Jeremy McNichols. Overall, just run the football a bit more. I think that would have helped. That's my only comment there. But it's, hey, that Falcons game, I hate to keep bringing it up, but I like to, someone asked me maybe earlier in the season about should you all temper expectations? And I'm going to keep it the same answer, which is you always temper expectations until they meet their goal, which means unless they've won the Super Bowl that year, temper your expectations, okay? Know what you're watching, know what's going on, but hey, key injuries here. And this was a team that gave the defense a lot of issues in December. So there's that. All right. I want to go to this question on the Commanders' pass rush.
Hi, Dan. In terms of, excuse me, the pass rush yesterday, what did you see that you thought led to not as much success as you've seen from that unit?
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, I thought, when are we going to take our shots, when to go. I thought early on, they did a nice job of, getting rid of the ball quickly, to get, intermediate throws to go. But the ones that are down the field, Howard, those are the ones that we've got to capitalize on. I thought we could have stunted more to try to, put the offensive line in some disadvantages to go. When you have good balance like they had yesterday, you're not teeing off to go. But I do feel like, we've got to get them off the spot. We had a number of chances, and we didn't nail those yesterday like we had the week before. That would be my main take. And then, honestly, like I said, at the end of the game, not being able to close Howard on the third downs, I thought that was, the biggest factor here. We had some chances here to get them in some third downs that you can get off the field, and when we didn't, and Joe tried, 3 different ones, a zone, a man pressure, and so we got to be able to nail those when those come up, that's for sure.
Now, Coach Quinn says that Joe Witt, he tried to change it up, but they didn't nail them. They were, the Falcons were even in second and long. So you saw moments in series where the defense is backing them up, right? It's there. It was just not consistent. Penix was able to get the ball out. He was even at times able to take his time to get the ball out. It was, but again, a desperate team is a dangerous team. So they were very, very, very out. And this is exactly what I just said. Penix never seemed uncomfortable. Never. So that pass rush also, it was not it just wasn't there. You saw moments, you saw glimpses, but it just wasn't there consistently. I mean, he was not rattled at all, ever. He didn't have a reason to be. Okay, so we have 2 more clips. These are my questions to Coach Quinn today. Going back to, I think I'm going to probably let's do the communication one first. There's been a lot of talk about miscommunication and all that. There was a couple questions asked today about communication. So I wanted to kind of follow up on what my question was on communication. Hey there, Coach. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I'm pulling on the thread a bit about communication. That was a point of emphasis for you all, all summer.
Yes.
We talked about that quite a bit. So what are your thoughts on what could be happening and why that's not materializing in game?
Yeah, I think there's a fine line, Candi, between like trying to play perfect and hitting, communication and being loud on the go. By being perfect, what do I mean by that? Like sometimes a speed motion happens, being so careful that you're late on a communication. You're not quick on it to go. And so I really want our guys to really trust their training. They've put good work in, and allow that to, fully be expressed and heard and acknowledged. There's not that many moving parts, with different people on the defensive side. So we want to make sure we can nail that. It could be as easy as communication could have been, you said it, did I receive it on a call when somebody's going quickly? It doesn't always mean like in motion or in the one. We had a pressure that didn't look as good. One player was doing one thing. Thought he heard a different call or a different technique. So I just want to make sure they trust their training. Like we don't have too many different things up. Let's make sure call it, let it rip, be aggressive.
Very interesting take there because, again, I know that was something that they worked on. It was something that they talked about a lot, that was getting better and that they were happy about. And now it's in season and it's like, well, what happened? So again, something to continue to use your clues, take your notes, watch that there. I think that it's just a very important point for certain. So I see I think I saw a question in the chat asking about Von Miller. It's again, it's how technical, how to the script are you sticking to, right? And I mean, Von did have a missed tackle as well, but I mean, sometimes you're gonna miss them, but they had double digits missed tackles yesterday, which could be for a variety of reasons. People just too fast. It's just very, very fast person. But it's still, how close to the script are you taking it, and are you just not able to adjust it in game? Now, of course, what I just played from the communication perspective, or just what coach was, sharing, they're doing different things, and it just didn't work. Just didn't work. Last clip for this evening, and I know we've watched a lot of clips, done a lot of dissecting everything going on, or just what the clips that we have watched this evening, and trying to understand a little bit more about the challenges, the issues, what happened, what needs to happen, what needs to be done more of. I did ask Coach Quinn about Mikey Sainristil. Check out his response here. And I know, between last season and this season, Mikey Sainristil, the inside, outside, you've kind of, done a little bit of both over the last season. And then, of course, with this season, a switch. What is your assessment thus far on how he's doing, and if he would potentially go back to what you all were doing last year?
Yeah, I was pleased to see a lot of what he did at the nickel in this game, Kenny. I thought he had some good tackles. He was aggressive inside, had the interception. So I was pleased to see Mikey improve from last game into this game. And so I thought he and Luvu were two that stood out to me of some things that had real progress.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So here's what I appreciate about that, because a couple weeks ago, love button fire emoji, I asked Coach Witt about Frankie Luvu, and I thought about playing that clip as well, just to remind folks what Coach Witt shared, in that response. But what Coach said there in terms of what he saw from Mikey playing at the nickel, and just his overall assessment and sharing, he sees improvement, and then mentioning, perhaps because he knows I've been asking about, Frankie as well, saying that he saw some improvement with Frankie also in the Atlanta Falcons game. So you all, as we close out this live Bowie Television recording, thank you all for sticking with me. Make sure you all are subscribed to Bowie TV. If you're in Prince George's County, Maryland, you can find us on Comcast channels 190 and 1097. Drop questions in the chat. Here's when I do the live on Bowie TV. I do a few lives that you all can find me pretty consistently. So the day after the game at 7:30 p.m., I do a live. I'm also often seen on Urban Sports Scene and the All Burgundy and Gold Everything show, which comes on Fox Sports 1340. I believe I'm getting all that right. I do pregame every week, every single week. You can catch me pregame an hour before the game. You can catch me on Bowie TV, as well as through Urban Sports Scene and All Burgundy and Go Everything as well. And just make sure you're subscribed. You can follow me on X at CWall SE. You all can find me. You can find Bowie TV. Trust me, you absolutely can. And hopefully you are this show, I hope, helps you and encourages you to also listen to press conferences, because I'm often heard, of course, in the press conference, because I'm always there. But you all, this doesn't get any easier. The season. And the injuries are a thing. The injuries are a thing. But let's see how they get creative and start to mix some things up to have a better showing, because it did not look good at all on defense. Like I said, the offense was, did enough there. Absolutely. Again, would I have liked to see more running of the football? Absolutely. But that was fine. but definitely on defense. Not sure what happened there. Not sure what happened. Um, and I don't know if it's one of those things. This literally just popped up into my mind that we're gonna go ahead and close out, where you kind of get punched in the mouth early, and it's hard for you to recover. Like, you punch me in the mouth, and oh my god, that hurt. Oh my goodness. Maybe my lip is busted a little bit. Now I can't get my thoughts together. I don't know. I'm just making that up. I have no idea. But the schedule does not get any easier, you all. So hopefully there will be some course correction. They're going over to the West Coast, facing another team that will be desperate in the LA Chargers after their loss to the New York Giants, and their rookie quarterback in Jackson Dart. So did not have the Chargers losing to the Giants on my bingo card at all. So this will be an interesting week. Two teams that are like not wanting to go into the next week without another win. And they both kind of need it, right? So it continues to get more and more interesting. Hopefully the injury bug can just go away altogether, because they had some tough injury. They got some injuries they're dealing with. It's some key spots, and we're starting to see that manifest itself during the game. But hey, like I said, shout out to the Falcons, right? Like, you got to know what you were going to be dealing with after the week 3 that they had against the Panthers, and you familiar with these folks. You just saw them in December. So their offensive weapons for sure had a day. And it was unfortunate that the Commanders could not get the W in front of what felt like a home game. I'm sure it certainly looked like it and sounded like it for certain. So you all make sure you stay locked in on Bowie TV. I'm so happy that you all are here, and trust me, I will be seeing you all again soon.